Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Steph, one of the lecturers for the Financial Literacy Curriculum at U of T Med, and today I'm going to be talking about an issue that not only affects me personally as an immigrant, but also some of our students have been bringing this up when seeking help at the financial aid office at the university. And they're asking, should I give money to help my parents and family members? What do I do if they ask me for money? And I get the desire to help your family out, especially coming from a collectivist immigrant family. For myself, my dad currently works on an assembly line, and my mom previously worked in fast food and for a dollar store. And one time I asked my parents, what would you have done if you can do any job in the world? And my dad said that he would have wanted to be a translator for the UN so that he can learn languages and travel. And my mom said that she wanted to be a journalist covering celebrities and TV shows. And I give this example because every immigrant parent has sacrificed their own dreams for their kids to fulfill theirs. So it's no question that I would want to help my parents out. But family finances is complex and it's hard to capture everyone's individual situation in one video. So I'm going to talk about my own experiences, but also 3 common cases of what I've seen and what you should think about when you're helping your family out and when you shouldn't help them out financially because that can do potentially more harm. Obviously, there will be nuances and this is not financial advice, so speaking to a financial advisor is a valuable resource. So I'm just going to list out the 3 common family scenarios first, and 1 or maybe all 3 might apply to you. So in the first case, let's say you have a parent who's living paycheck to paycheck. Whether you're from a single parent or dual parent household, finances are very tight, and if someone gets sick or loses their job, they could potentially lose their house or not be able to put food on the table. In the second case, I'll call it the opportunistic parent for lack of a better term. This is when family members might see you as a high income earner, or you have high income potential, or you have access to cheap debt, such as a large student line of credit. And so there's an opportunity there for them to pay off their mortgage faster or leverage your financial resources to make further gains in real estate or other investments. However, they may not necessarily be living paycheck to paycheck, but having your financial resources can help them fast track their financial goals. And in the third case, the parents with addiction. So I'm just going to call it out for what it is because I have seen this in my clinical practice as an addictions physician, seeing kids bring their parents in for a family intervention due to gambling or substance addiction, for instance. And these can get very costly for the family finances. So in the first and second case is what I've personally experienced, and probably my biggest mistake is just handing the money to family, no questions asked. So I had given my parents $5,000 a couple of times and I knew it was going to be for the mortgage, but I didn't know how much was the mortgage, nor did I get anything written down on paper. So when I came home from university, there was like a new car on the driveway and like a furniture set in the living room. And I was like, wait, isn't that money supposed to be for mortgage and utilities? Turns out that $5,000 was more than enough to cover a mortgage. So the first lesson here is to always ask for details. If your parents are living paycheck to paycheck, this could be due to low income or poor budgeting skills. Sit down with your family members and ask, okay, how much are you paying for mortgage or rent? How much is coming in and out? And in what capacity you would be helping out? Sometimes they might not even have a budget, or they're too overwhelmed or don't have the time to look at all the bills. The next thing is look at your own financial situation. Do you have any income coming in, or will you be taking it from loans to help your family? For me, in the summers when I had a summer job but didn't have to pay tuition, I had some extra income which I put some into an emergency fund that I can use for emergency, whether it be a personal one or a family one. And I try to only pay the exact amount needed, whether it be for like utilities or a broken furnace. I would just pay the exact amount, not to my parents, directly to the utilities account number or to the repair company. But what if you don't have any cash flow at all? Something that I offered instead was my time. And as an immigrant, that usually looks like, translating stuff for my parents or helping them with tech stuff. But that could also mean helping them get government funding, especially if they're low income or if one of your parents have a disability or a health problem and can't work. Well, the government of Canada has something called a benefits finder site, and that matches federal and provincial programs as well as tax benefits to your situation, whether it might be due to unemployment or the need to pay for medical supplies, for instance. Your parents might even qualify for programs like Ontario Works if they're in Ontario, which is a social assistance program that I think every province has to kind of help people with food like special diets, shelter, as well as other essential costs of living. In fact, the Financial Aid Office at U of T, we've put together a list of government resources, which I will link in the description below. And I would go to these kind of services first, because if you're borrowing money, like you're borrowing from a line of credit, for instance, that's actually meant for your education, while these government programs are meant for social assistance. The third tip would be to clarify with your family if this is a loan or a gift. A lot of the time, family members will ask you to borrow money, but what they actually want is a gift. And if there's no documentation, no signature, then there's no way for you to get your money back. Maybe if it's the case where your parents are living paycheck to paycheck, then it might be more likely to be a gift if you're wanting to help them out. But in the case of parents who might see your income or a line of credit, whatever, as a way of fast tracking their mortgage payments or using it as leverage for another investment, you don't want to run the risk of them ending up with the asset, but you ending up responsible for all of the debt. That can put a huge burden on your shoulders and adds to your stress, especially if you're a student or especially if you just start a new job. So to kind of prevent this fourth issue, it's to have a paper trail. Promissory notes for smaller loans and loan agreements, which are used for larger loans of sums of money, are legally binding documents that establish how much is borrowed, when will the money be repaid, and whether there's interest charged, and it's also signed by both parties. So there's a lot more info that can go on a promissory note, but for more info, I'll definitely put a resource in the description, and there's a really good article about promissory notes in Canada. So the other thing is asking your family members to sign contracts for a repayment plan can often elicit strong feelings. So if you feel that the relationship is often strained to begin with, adding money to the mix will further complicate things. Sometimes having a mediator like a financial planner or accountant who kind of knows the tax implications of making such a loan can help. Otherwise, you might have to explore more creative ways of getting things on paper. So for example, let's say you're living at home and you might want to consider drafting a lease agreement with your parents so that you're paying them rent to help them out financially, and you also have the rent receipt on paper so that you can use that for your tax deduction purposes as well, especially if you're working from home. Speaking of the tax implications, the fifth tip is to always know the risks. There are a lot of long-term risks to lending to family, despite perhaps them telling you about these short-term gains, helping them saving a couple hundred on mortgage interest, for instance. If you're borrowing money to loan to family, it can affect your credit score. So in class, I said that your credit score is like your financial report card or GPA. It tells lenders how reliable you are in paying off debts, and if you have a good score, then you can actually get more favorable lending rates whenever you get a loan. Remember, when you were an undergrad, stressing about your GPA and how if you get one low mark in a course that can tank your entire GPA, and then to redeem your GPA, it's quite tough. Some pre-meds might do extra courses or they might do another degree, taking years to fix it. So your credit score is similar, and it can also take years to fix if you damage it. And the two biggest factors that affects your score is the credit utilization and payment history. So if you're always maximizing your credit limits or getting close to the limit, it might show that you have high utilization, and that might potentially affect your score. If you're always maximizing your limits constantly and let's say you end up in an emergency situation where you might need money, like let's say you need to repeat a year, or you end up in an emergency situation where you're disabled, for instance, right? You might not have enough money to make those payments on time. And once that snowball starts rolling, it can quickly damage your credit score And that might take years to fix and has these long-term impacts on getting favorable rates when you get a mortgage or car loan or whatever in the future. So that's what I mean by, recognizing the long-term risks of maybe saving a few $100s now might mean that you're paying more in the future. And the other thing to keep in mind is if you do borrow money to loan that money to family, just remember that charging interest on the loan can be a protective factor for you because it allows you to deduct the interest that you're paying on the loan for tax purposes. And let's say if the family member stops paying you, it also allows you to claim a capital loss. So, or in the case if you decide to forgive the debt, just be careful about that borrowed money ending up counting as taxable income for your family member. So depending on how big the forgiven loan is, it might have some big tax implications. And also depending on how significant the amount is, it's always best to involve an accountant so you know that you're not ending up with, these long-term losses for your family member in return for these short-term gains. So although we're brought up to think that our parents know best, sometimes they don't know everything. And if they're always coming to you for money, it can actually indicate a lack of financial acumen or a sentinel event for a bigger problem. So if family members are coming to you because they want you to invest in the next big thing that they're invested in, or they're asking you to bail them out of debt frequently, this could indicate a gambling addiction. And in this case, supporting them financially can exacerbate the addiction more. After all, the first step in dealing with addiction is to take accountability for your actions and putting in the work to face the consequences head on. If you're always being asked to bail someone out of a gambling debt, just politely decline and offer to support them in other ways, such as bringing them to a treatment clinic like a rapid access addiction medicine clinic, or encouraging them to show up to counseling sessions. People aren't going to remember how much money you lent them, but they will remember you being present when you needed them the most. So I hope learning from my experiences can help you when you're being asked by family members for money. And remember, there are always people that you can turn to for help. Those of us at the University Financial Aid Office, financial advisors, and accountants. And if there are any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to be notified of future lecture recordings. Thank you for listening.